Motherfucker's a okay? That's straight up honesty. Motherfucker's a okay? He deserved it. He reached for nothing. Shot the motherfucker's face. He made a
The disappearance of T'Neya Tovar, a 17-year-old girl from Hemet, began quietly in December 2025, but it would soon turn into one of the most disturbing teen murder investigations in Southern California. Her family searched desperately for answers, as concern grew that something had gone terribly wrong. Those fears deepened in early January 2026, when authorities made a grim discovery. A decomposed human leg found in a remote area, later confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Tovar. The case shifted instantly from a missing person search to a homicide investigation. In February, police arrested Abraham Feinblum, 51, after tracking him down following an attempted evasion of law enforcement. He was taken into custody on suspicion of murder and resisting a peace officer. Investigators now believe Tovar was killed shortly after she went missing and continue to appeal to the public for information, as many questions surrounding her final days remain unanswered. When T'Neya Tovar vanished in December 2025, her absence at first looked like many other missing teen cases, worrying, urgent, but still holding space for hope. Family members believed she might return home or contact someone she trusted. Friends shared her photo online, flyers circulated. Each passing day without answers, however, tightened the sense that something was deeply wrong. T'Neya was 17 years old, still in high school, and known to those around her as a teenager navigating the ordinary pressures of adolescence. When she failed to come home and could not be reached, her family reported her missing, triggering an investigation by local authorities in Hemet. Detectives began retracing her last known movements, speaking with friends, classmates, and anyone who might have seen her in the days before she disappeared. At that stage, the investigation focused on locating T'Neya alive. Search efforts expanded, tips were logged, and officers worked to establish a timeline. But despite weeks of effort, there were no confirmed sightings, no phone activity, and no signs that she had left voluntarily. The uncertainty weighed heavily on her family, who continued to push for attention on the case as the calendar turned to the new year. The investigation took a devastating turn. Authorities were notified after a decomposed human leg was discovered in a remote area. The location was not publicly detailed, but officials confirmed it was within the region connected to the missing persons search. For investigators, the discovery immediately raised the possibility of homicide. The remains were sent for forensic examination. Due to the condition of the leg, visual identification was impossible. Instead, DNA testing was conducted, a process that took time but was necessary to confirm identity with certainty. When the results came back, they delivered the outcome T'Neya's family had feared most. The leg belonged to T'Neya Tovar. With that confirmation, the case officially shifted from a missing teen investigation to a homicide inquiry. Detectives now worked under the assumption that T'Neya had been killed shortly after her disappearance. The focus moved from search operations to reconstructing her final days and identifying who was responsible. Investigators reviewed digital evidence, including phone records, messages, and location data. They examined known associates and analyzed any interactions T'Neya may have had in the days leading up to her disappearance. Each piece of information was treated cautiously, as detectives sought to build a clear, evidence-based picture rather than rely on assumptions. Attention eventually turned to Abraham Feinblum, a 51-year-old man who, according to authorities, became a person of interest during the investigation. Law enforcement has not publicly disclosed every detail connecting Feinblum to T'Neya, citing the ongoing nature of the case, but confirmed that evidence led them to focus on him as a suspect. By February 2026, investigators were actively attempting to locate Feinblum. When officers moved to contact him, authorities say he attempted to evade law enforcement. The encounter escalated into an arrest, during which Feinblum was taken into custody on suspicion of murder, as well as resisting a peace officer. Officials emphasized that the resisting charge stemmed from his actions during the arrest, not from the underlying homicide itself. The arrest marked a critical moment in the case, but it did not bring closure. Feinblum's detention answered one question, who investigators believed was responsible, but left many others unresolved. Authorities continued to withhold specific details about the manner of death, the exact timeline, and how T'Neya's remains came to be located where they were found. For T'Neya's family, the arrest was both a relief that a suspect had been identified and taken off the streets, anguish because confirmation of homicide made her death undeniable, grief, once mixed with hope, now stood alone. Law enforcement officials made it clear that the investigation was far from over. They stressed that homicide cases often involve more information than what is initially made public, and that additional witnesses or evidence could still emerge. Detectives urged anyone with knowledge of T'Neya's movements, relationships, or interactions in December 2025 to come forward. The public appeal served a dual purpose. First, it aimed to strengthen the case against the suspect by uncovering corroborating evidence. Second, it sought to ensure that no other individuals involved, directly or indirectly, escaped scrutiny. Authorities did not confirm whether they believed Feinblum acted alone, stating only that all possibilities remained under review. The discovery of only part of T'Neya's remains added another layer of complexity. Investigators acknowledged that recovering additional evidence could be critical, both for understanding what happened and for providing her family with answers. Searches continued in areas connected to the suspect and to locations identified through investigative leads. Community reaction in Hemet was swift and somber. Residents expressed shock that a teenager had gone missing and been killed so close to home. Schools offered counseling resources. Local leaders called for vigilance, while urging the public not to speculate or spread unverified claims. The case also highlighted the vulnerability of missing teens, particularly when initial disappearances do not immediately trigger widespread alarm. Advocates pointed out that early attention can be crucial, and that delays, however unintentional, can have irreversible consequences. As the legal process moved forward, Feinblum remained in custody, awaiting formal charges in court proceedings. Prosecutors prepared to review the evidence collected so far, while investigators continued filling in the gaps. Every step had to meet legal standards, as the outcome of the case would ultimately depend on what could be proven in court, not what was suspected. For those who knew T'Neya, her name became more than a case file. Friends shared memories online, describing her personality, her humor, and her plans for the future. These accounts stood in stark contrast to the clinical language of police statements and forensic reports, reminding the public that the victim was a real person, not just a headline. Authorities reiterated that justice in cases like this is often slow and methodical. While the arrest of a suspect is a major milestone, it is only one stage in a longer process that includes charging decisions, hearings, and potentially a trial. Throughout it all, investigators emphasized their commitment to following the evidence wherever it leads. The murder investigation into T'Neya Tovar remains active. What is known is tragic and undeniable. A 17-year-old girl went missing, part of her remains were recovered, and a man nearly 3 times her age has been arrested in connection with her death. What remains unknown, how exactly she was killed, why she was targeted, and whether others were involved, continues to drive the search for answers. As authorities continue to ask for the public's help, the case stands as a reminder of how quickly a disappearance can turn fatal and how critical timely information can be. For T'Neya's family, the hope now rests not in finding her alive, but in uncovering the full truth of what happened, and ensuring that those responsible are held fully accountable under the law. As the investigation continued, law enforcement officials emphasized that the arrest of Abraham Feinblum was not the end of the case, but a critical turning point. Detectives worked carefully to strengthen the evidentiary foundation, knowing that homicide prosecutions hinge not on suspicion, but on proof that can withstand scrutiny in court. Every detail, from digital records to forensic timelines, was treated as potentially decisive. Authorities confirmed that the discovery of only part of T'Neya Tovar's remains presented unique challenges. Without a full recovery, investigators relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, DNA confirmation, and corroborating information to reconstruct what happened. Forensic experts explained that decomposition can obscure cause-of-death indicators, making witness testimony and digital evidence even more significant. Search efforts continued quietly in areas connected to the case. While officials declined to specify locations, they acknowledged that additional evidence could still be found. The goal was not only to build a stronger case, but also to provide T'Neya's family with as much closure as possible. In cases like this, recovery of remains carries both legal and emotional weight. The public appeal for information remained active. Detectives asked anyone who had seen T'Neya in December 2025, communicated with her online. Investigators stressed that tips would be evaluated discreetly and responsibly. Community response reflected a mixture of grief and frustration. Many residents of Hemet questioned how a teenager could disappear without immediate resolution. Advocacy groups pointed to systemic issues common in missing teen cases: limited early leads, reliance on voluntary reporting, and the difficulty of distinguishing between runaways and those in danger. T'Neya's case, they said, demonstrated how quickly assumptions can cost precious time. School officials and youth counselors addressed the emotional impact on students who knew T'Neya or followed the case closely. For young people, the reality that someone their age could vanish and be killed was deeply unsettling. counselors focused on safety awareness, encouraging teens to speak openly about uncomfortable interactions and to seek help without fear of judgment. As Feinblum remained in custody, prosecutors began the methodical process of reviewing charges. Murder cases involving minors are treated with heightened seriousness, but legal standards remain strict. Authorities declined to discuss potential motives publicly, cautioning that premature conclusions could jeopardize the case. What mattered, they said, was assembling a narrative grounded entirely in evidence. The resisting a peace officer charge added another layer to the legal proceedings. While secondary to the homicide allegation, it underscored Feinblum's behavior during arrest and became part of the broader picture prosecutors would present. Law enforcement officials noted that attempts to evade police often become relevant during trials, particularly when evaluating consciousness of guilt. For T'Neya's family, the months since her disappearance felt both endless and suspended in time. Each development, first hope, then confirmation of remains, then arrest, family representatives expressed gratitude to investigators. Their focus, they said, was not revenge, but accountability and truth. The case also drew attention to the role of DNA technology in modern investigations. Without genetic testing, experts highlighted how advances in forensic science increasingly determine the direction of complex cases, especially when traditional evidence is limited. Still, technology alone could not answer every question. Detectives continued to rely on human cooperation, witnesses willing to speak, individuals willing to come forward despite discomfort or fear. Authorities reiterated that silence can delay justice, while information, even imperfect, can move an investigation forward. As weeks turned into months, the legal process slowed to its deliberate pace. Court dates were scheduled, evidence was cataloged, defense and prosecution prepared for proceedings that could extend far into the future. For the public, updates became less frequent, but the case remained active behind the scenes. What remained constant was the absence left by T'Neya's death. Friends remembered her laughter, her plans, her presence, a digital memorial that contrasted sharply with the grim facts of the investigation. These remembrances served as a reminder that behind legal terminology stood a life interrupted far too soon. Law enforcement officials concluded public briefings with a consistent message. Investigations like this are built over time. While the arrest of a suspect is significant, justice depends on patience, precision, and the willingness of the community to participate responsibly. They urged the public to avoid speculation and to allow the process to unfold. The murder investigation into T'Neya Tovar remains ongoing. What is known is painful and undeniable. What is still unknown continues to drive the search for answers. Each step forward carries the weight of expectation, not just for a conviction, but for clarity, accountability, and acknowledgement of a young life lost. If this story matters to you, and you believe fact-based reporting helps prevent misinformation, please like this video, share it so others stay informed, and subscribe to the channel for more carefully researched true crime coverage.